The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
So, Rabotai, I want to share with you an unbelievable story that was shared by the Panovich Rav Kahaneman, was said to Rav Galinsky, and he said as follows. He said when he was young, he would study in the kollel of the Kodashim, where they were studying all the laws of the sacrifices of Zevachim and Achot, Timurah, all the Masechtot that deal with how we act at the time of the Bet HaMikdash. And the head of this yeshiva and kollel was whom? Was none other than the Chofetz Chaim. Well, one day, the wife of the Chofetz Chaim, the Rabbanit, the Rebbitzin, she was telling him, I want you to know that you see your rabbi and you think he's so special and you think he's so famous and he has his life, everything's going so well for him. But you know, we had times of such great lack, such great problems in our history, in our marriage, in our life. We suffered so much to get here. The Rabbi Panovich Rav never heard of anything like this. So he says, what do you mean? She said, well, when we first got married, we had a store. I would work in the store. The rabbi would work in the store for a certain amount of hours each day. But what did we make? We made very little money. And I would take the little bit of money that we scraped together, a couple of pennies, and times were really tough. We had no food. I would go down to the bakery, and for the couple pennies that I'd earned that day, he would allow me to take the crumbs from the bread that they cut. He would allow me to take the little end piece of the bread that was left over after they cut the loaf for other customers that had the money. Whatever flour was left over that hadn't been used to make the bread, and I would buy all the leftovers of that day from the bakery. I would come home, throw it in a pot. It was little scraps. But when I would boil it together, I was able to make some sort of a stew or some little kind of, the dough would stick together, would become nourishing in the water, at soup or whatever it was. I would make little things where out of all these pieces together, and that's what we would eat. Anyway, there was, of course, times when things got even more difficult. The boy is sitting there looking, he can't believe this, he never heard this about the rabbi. At the rabbi, they had to go live off the scraps, off the leftovers that you could buy for a couple pennies at the end of the day in the bakery. But she's not done. She says, came the day where she ran out. There was no money in the house and there was no food. So she goes to the baker and she says, listen, I'm here every day. I come with a couple pennies, I buy. She says, today I didn't make anything. I don't have any money. Please, could you sell me the leftovers, the garbage? Could you sell it to me on credit? And tomorrow, when I make some money, Bezrat Hashem, I'll come and I'll pay you. Baker says, sure. So he gives her credit, 2 pennies, he writes it down, and he gives her the little crumbs, a little bit of flour, a half a slice of the end of a bread. She goes home. One day, the Chofetz Chaim comes home from his studies, and he sees his wife is crying by the window. So he says, what's the matter? She can't face him. She's looking out the window, she's crying. He says, what's the matter? She says, every day, I take the pennies I earn, I go to the baker, I buy the little scraps, whatever's left over. He says, yes, of course, it's fine, it's great. I love it. It gives me the power to study, to learn, to grow. She says, of course, of course. She says, but then I ran out of money, I didn't have anything left. So I went and I asked him and he gave it to us on credit. Okay, so I went on credit, 2 days, 3 days on credit. I got there today and the baker said, I'm sorry, until you bring the money, I'm not giving you the crumbs. I'm not giving you the extra flour. I'm not giving you the last slice of crusty bread. So I have nothing to eat. I have nothing to serve you. I know you study all day, you work so hard. She says, for myself, I'm okay. I'm not so hungry. I'm sure she was. But she says, how could you study? How could you learn? How could you grow to be the Talmid Chacham that you could be if I can't give you any food for nourishment? The Chofetz Chaim sees his wife. He sees she's suffering. She's in pain. And he bangs on the table. And he says, Gira be'enecha ha-satan. He quotes the Gemara in Kiddushin. He said, an arrow in your eye, O Satan, O Yetzer Hara. An arrow in your eye. A term indicating that he's not going to be beat. And he says, what you think? Because I don't have any food, you're going to stop me from learning Torah? You're going to stop us from growing? You're going to stop us from developing, from becoming tzaddikim, tzidkaniyot? I'll starve and I'll learn. Nothing you do is going to stop me. The Rabbanit says to the young Panovich Rebbe, to Rav Kahaneman, she says, and I went to the bakery the next morning And the baker suddenly had changed his mind. Happy to continue the credit until I was able, Baruch Hashem, after a little while, to pay off the debt. And now here we are where we are. But you should just know the times of difficulty went through to get to this place, for your rabbi to be the person that he is, to make the impact that he has. She smiled and said, I know why the baker gave us credit and changed his mind. Because once my husband said, I'll starve and I'll learn, what point was there for the Satan to get in our way anymore? So he left us alone. And when he left us alone, the baker gave us what we needed. There was no point. My friends, there's something very beautiful here. The Panovich Rav said afterwards, he says, you and I, what would our eyes have been on? Eyes would have been on the bread, on the crumbs, on the baker. We would have figured out how to talk to the baker. We would have figured out a little bit. This is what would have caught our attention. But someone like the Chofetz Chaim didn't lose his focus. He understood that if he was doing the right thing and something was getting in his way, it could be none other than the Yetzer Hara. It could be none other than the Satan. It could be nothing else but a test, a nisayon. And when you look the nisayon in the eye and you tell it, I see you. I know what you are. I'm not bending. I'm not breaking. Then the test crumbles before you because it has lost its point. There's no reason for it to continue anymore. I see you.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org